So if you turn it around to the other side, what you will see is what I stand for and what we're running on. How did I get involved with this? I moved to the West Coast in 1979 with my husband and 2 children to work with Dr. Carl Sagan. My husband had been a planetarium director back east, and we got to know Carl, and he was doing a little something called the Cosmos series, and we moved out here to work with him. I became his vice president of marketing for the Cosmos store, and my husband ended up working with Carl and eventually ended up at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory as the head of flight engineering for Voyager 2 and for Galileo spacecraft. So we came to California because you couldn't do what was going on in California anyplace else in the world. And it was very exciting. History was being made. My husband walked in one night with a bunch of squiggles on a piece of paper, and I said, "What's that?" And he said, "You are the 4th human on Earth to see an asteroid up close." So I happened, because of my life experience, to believe that humans are capable of enormous things. And this particular part of the world, Orange County, was a place I remember my dad, I lived on the South Shore of Long Island, a little place called Babylon Village, and I remember my dad when I was young saying, "They're doing such exciting things out there in that California. There's a thing, Sue, you need to know about called Imagineering. And they are doing that thing at a place called Disneyland, and I'm going to take you kids there." And in 1961, he packed all 5 of us in the car. My poor mother drove a station wagon all around the United States and did take us to that Disneyland. And he always promised, "When I retire, I'm going to come and work in that Disneyland because it's so exciting what they're doing there." And it wasn't just that, it was the fabulous aerospace capabilities, all the things that were taking place. And so when I completed bringing up my kids in La Canyone, unfortunately my husband had contracted a thing called bone marrow cancer. We found out a year and a day after he died that JPL was one of the largest Superfund sites in the country. And so I really got some pretty hard education about what it's like to do 2 things. One, if you poison the place you live, dogs know this, if you poison the place you live, you have a price to pay for it. And 2, even when the worst thing happens to you, you have to get over it. You have to move forward. I had my son and I had my daughter, not to mention the beautiful golden retriever who kept me company day after day. And the worst thing that could happen had happened. And yet I had to move forward. At the same time, I was a consultant, and I was being brought in by company after company. My introduction to Orange County happened to be a company that was an auto transport company. They had the contract with Ford Motor Company that when a car was brought into the state, they picked it up at the state line and brought it right to the dealership. Well, when the president said to me, "This is my challenge, Sue," my grandfather knew Henry Ford himself. And my father knew Henry Ford Jr. And I happened to go to school with Henry Ford III. And my son also knows Henry Ford IV, and I expect him to do that. But the Japanese are requiring that we have our contracts open to a public challenge. And so I cannot convince my vice presidents that they either change or our company is going to go down. What I started to do then, and in company after company after that, is focus on organizations that were absolutely in terror of change. I submit to you, the United States Congress, the Tea Party, and half of America is facing exactly that. The world is shifted out from under us. It's not the world we used to know. Some very, very clever and maybe slightly evil people are taking advantage of those fears and creating things that we don't want to have happen. But the other side of it is that if you look at a company like Sears, and then you look at the internet, one of the best top companies in the internet is a little company called what? That should have been Sears. Anyone? A company that makes things available and then will send them to you. Amazon.com, Sears and Roebuck, anyone? How about Kodak? Kodak decided we don't want this digital revolution. What are we going to do? We're going to not pay attention to it. We're not going to change. And a little company called Instagram came along, and they got sold to Facebook for $1 billion recently. And Kodak, anyone familiar with what's going on there? They're basically almost completely destroyed. Those are iconic American companies. Whole entire families have been brought up brilliantly because of those companies. And so, weirdly in my life, I have been made uniquely skilled at turning companies around, at being able to take people who are massively in fear of change and help them transition through it. So going to Congress for me is more of the same. That's what my clients have been like for 30 years. My job, as I see it there, is to take the values I was taught as a middle-class child, oldest of 5 kids, being brought up by parents who worked really hard, and every one of us is now a contributor to society because they had good jobs. And when my dad first came out of the military, he got a job with AT&T, and I remember when AT&T had a big strike, and I watched my parents have to suffer through that and work and make a place, but it gave him a job that allowed him to have a good life for all of us. So I will fight for the middle class, not for a minimum wage, but for a living wage. Nobody in this country should work full-time and end up under the poverty line. It's unacceptable. I am a fierce advocate for women. I've been fighting for women my entire life. I taught classes in women in management. I wrote the #2 and #3 business case studies on women. I have done everything in my power to empower women and make it possible for women to achieve more. Quality education, I'm a lifelong educator. We have the answer, by the way. You want to solve poverty? We know how to do that. You want to solve hate, anger, depression? We know how to do that. It's all education. Teachers are not our enemies. And this attitude that teachers and public servants and firemen and I live in Newport Beach, where they can't wait at the city council to do everything they can to outsource the activities of our hardworking people in our district. They asked me to be on the Charter Commission in 2012. I kind of think Keith Curry didn't remember what he knew about me. I was one of the people who started the Newport Beach Women's Democratic Club. And for 7 years, we'd been fighting Keith at every turn. You want to put a statue of Ronald Reagan outside our city hall? Not gonna happen, Keith. And now it's way off in the middle of Bonita Canyon Park somewhere, but nobody's seen it in years. You really want to, the Board of Supervisors, defund Planned Parenthood? I will come in there with 200 people if necessary, and we did. And we made them overturn that. And so I don't mind being in the belly of the beast. Babylon was a pretty conservative town when I was growing up. It's fine with me that I'm taking on a guy who thinks Neanderthal thoughts, as far as I'm concerned. The district, as you heard, was won by Obama in 2008, not 100 years ago, but 6 years ago. The young came out because they were excited. He's coming to UCI. He's going to speak at the UCI graduation. Women came out. Women with the idea that we may have Hillary down the line. It's starting to happen. The energy's happening all over the place. And we need the independents to come back. As you just heard, we need the money to do that. There's no question. I've got 2 guys running against me on the Democratic side, one of which nobody can find. A guy named Dave Burns, who's been a lawyer in Costa Mesa for 30 years. We don't know who he is, but apparently maybe Mr. Rohrabacher does. I'm told that that's not an unusual model for him. So we're fighting the good fight. We are out there. I have a team that's absolutely outstanding. We are willing to take it on. People said to me at the convention, Sue, you're really going to take on Dana Rohrabacher? I said, you know, they told me all my life I was just like my dad. And my dad at 19 years old was standing at the bottom of Mount Suribachi on a little island called Iwo Jima. And this officer asked him, would you take this communication line up to the top of Mount Suribachi? And he said, absolutely yes. And he and his team took that communication line up, and it was at least eliminating a lot of the slaughter that was taking place. So I'm not going into live bullets. The day he starts attacking us, we're going to have a party, because it means we're really getting to him. So anything you can do, everything you can do, just a thought, The Seal Beach Democratic Club just contacted us. We went to see them a while ago. They are going to create a slate mailer from their Democratic Club and send that out to the community with the candidates that they are supporting. And I don't know if that falls within something that your organization might do, but anything I can do to work with you, please tell us. And I appreciate the time allowing me to come and talk to you about this. I appreciate all you do. You make all the difference. You are the organization in Orange County. So thank you all again very much.